So I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the throat chakra. There's a lot to say about the throat chakra, so I may do a series of videos on this because there's just so many different aspects. But so I'm gonna talk a little about these a little bit in chunks. So the fifth chakra, as many of you probably know, is the throat chakra. It is just above the heart. It is the faculty that allows us to speak and be heard and be understood, to communicate and be in cooperation with others. It is the mediator between our mind and our body, just like the heart is. And it really is like what gives voice and gives physicality to what's living in us on our lower chakras. So our feelings, our needs, our desires, and what we love, what's on our heart, our passions. Our voice is the vehicle from which we are able to make things happen. And the throat chakra is also connected, the heart and the throat are connected with the hands and the arms, in the sense that like this is what we do physically to make things happen in the world too. It's what our chakra system connects to spirit. So this is where I delineate from what I read in other books and what I hear other people talking about. My experience is different than what I've heard other people talk about, which is I feel loved ones, spirit guides, angels, any etheric kind of entities that we communicate with. I feel like when we're channeling, they plug into the back of our throat chakra. That's what I see, at least for myself and what I've seen in other people when they're doing their work. And because the throat chakra is associated with ether, it's really the last chakra that has the last vestige of an element. A physical element is ether. It is the most spiritualized element of all of them. It is basically existing in the non-physical realm altogether. So the fact that I see us connect in with our spirit guides through this chakra and then communicate, get voice to our spirit, to the spirit guides, to the angels, makes sense. So it's very much like how we share the messages of our spirit, of our guides, bring in ideas and inspirations and communicate those. The throat chakra also has a lot to do with our human needs of needing to express ourselves, to feel understood, to feel heard, to feel like we're making a difference through the use of our voice, and that we're included, and that there's a mutuality in relationships, that like there's a give and take. So I express what I need, you express, your ability or inability to help me with that. I listen to your needs, I express my capability to help you with those things or not help you with those things, and that's cooperation. And it's really an element of relationships in the throat chakra as well, like the heart chakra, but more in a sense of communication and cooperation, and also a sense of being included and belonging in groups. The throat chakra is also connected with our ear chakras, which is where our psychic sense of clairaudience comes in. So this is where we hear the voices of our higher self, or our loved ones, or our ancestors, or our angels and guides. It's where we can hear the non-physical world. It's also, this is debated also, but this is my opinion, I believe it's also connected with telepathy. Some people say that's more crown chakra or third eye chakra, but I really see it as the communication bandwidth of the physical world, telepathy between other living physical beings in this reality. So animals, plants, humans, pretty much the bandwidth of thought forms that exists in this 3D reality, I believe are picked up from our fifth chakra. Now, telepathy with like higher beings, higher guides, I do believe happens in the higher chakras, but telepathy I do think happens through the throat chakra because it is a byproduct of the etheric body of the mind. Our thought forms, our beliefs, our ways of thinking are something that we pick up on, whether we're conscious of it or not conscious of it. And also we can receive as much as we emit and transmit. We transmit our own telepathic communications. It's a two-way conversation. So they call it like broadband telepathy, where speakers who speak in front of thousands of people who are able to influence and control and like get people into the same frame of thinking have a broadband telepathy. They have an influence. When they're giving a speech, they're not just doing it with their words, they're doing it energetically. It's a form of telepathy. I can't help but think of Hitler for some reason, but having the charisma and the energy behind what he's saying to get other people to be in support and cheer with him, or Martin Luther King Jr., any big influencers, speakers who get collections of people to stand behind their mission and their values. And then we have like narrow band telepathy, which is like person to person or animal to person or plant to person, where we're able to pick up individual one-on-one messages from each other through the form of telepathy. So you can see there's just a lot of different forms of communication that happen, and there's a lot of dynamics. So just like I talked about with the heart chakra, we have the dynamic of what we receive from spirit. We had the dynamic with what we have with other living beings on the physical horizontal plane. And we also have what's being expressed from within ourselves, our inner dimension. So like what blocks a throat chakra has to do with these different dimensionalities. If we are not clearly expressing our needs or our feelings or ideas, and we're stuffing them in, or we're hiding, or we are afraid to share and be vulnerable, our true selves with other people, we ultimately like shrink and shut down that chakra, which blocks our spirit communication, which blocks our inspiration, which blocks our clairaudience and the psychic senses, the telepathy. I mean, you can also shut down the throat chakra by not sharing, like not using your voice, basically just being silent. And there's lots of experiences that cause people to shut down. Most of them are relational dynamics with other human beings that have created conditions of oppression or suppression or denial on one another that have made it unsafe for you to express yourself. So it's safer just to be quiet, to be invisible, to not be seen, to not be the tall poppy, right? To not be the point of attack or the point of criticism or the point of standing out so much that then you're, deeply analyzed and judged. That it's a form of self-protection to just kind of shut down and hide out. But when we do use our voice, we feel free, we feel safe to speak our truth. When we are fully embodied, when all of our chakras are embodied, like us stuffing our truth, that's the lower chakra issues. It has to do with not feeling safe, with not feeling heard, with feeling oppressed. Our power dynamics have been squeezed. So when we are empowered from the bottom chakras up to our throat chakra, we feel safe, we feel free, and we easily express how we feel, what we think, our ideas, our values, the true vulnerable things that are living within us. We can communicate to people who we desire to communicate to. We openly and effectively convey what we want to say. Like if someone's kind of stuffed up in a throat chakra, they may find themselves stumbling over their words, stuttering, not being able to clearly articulate the ideas that they have in their head. It's like no matter what they do, the words never quite match the download or thoughts that they're trying to convey. I know this one really strongly because I felt like that in my childhood. I actually had to get speech therapy. I spoke really late in life. I didn't know how to read until like 5th grade. I was really behind on writing, speaking, reading, and all the communication stuff. And I always kind of struggled with speaking, which I'm a very different person now, but I still have some of my hangups and hiccups where like I say certain words wrong, or like I say something completely backward, right? It's like it almost gets like jumbled up. But I feel a lot more free and clear now than I did back then. And that's because I've worked on the lower chakras and kind of got myself into alignment. But if you feel like you can never really quite convey what you mean to convey, it could be a sign that you're feeling stifled here. But when it's really wide and open, we feel connected with others because they see and they hear us. Like we expose enough of ourselves through what we share with them that they really get to know us. This is another level that I experienced in my life where I hadn't realized I was living in like such hyper codependency with people, that I was always in interactions asking them, how are they doing? What's going on in their life, and getting into their business so much so that I rarely had airtime to talk about what was going on with me. And so a lot of people didn't even really know me very well. And then when I went through a really hard time and I needed that level of support, and I came to them wanting to talk about myself and my problems and my challenges, it was almost like there was an inability of them to be able to do that for me because that was a new dynamic to them. And I realized that these people who I now was being vulnerable and opening up with real raw feelings and real raw situations that I was going through, that they looked at me like, who are you? They're like, all of a sudden they saw me as like being someone else because I was sharing myself with them on a deeper level. But when it's open and it's well received by people, we feel heard and understood by them. But we can't be heard and understood by people if we're not really sharing our truth. If we're just saying what we know other people want to hear, or agreeing with other people because we don't want to upset them. If we're saying yes to things when we really want to say no, that's not living in your truth. So we become the voice of our higher self when we're really channeling in up from the higher chakras, which we'll talk about next. We are able to clearly bring those higher perspectives, those higher truths, those downloaded messages, inspirations, and ideas, and bring them out and externalize them through our voice or our hands, through actually making something happen. We're able to convey them in a way that people can understand. An open throat chakra results in us feeling inspired and motivated and moved to actually make something happen, because we have experiences that our voice makes a difference in the world, that we are able to do something about the world and make a difference and impact others and better the world. When our throat chakra is really wide open, we stand up for ourselves. We refuse to be silenced. We don't stand back and hold back what we so desperately want to call out. The injustices of the world, or advocate for the people who are voiceless. We feel a sense of duty and responsibility to use our voice when that opportunity arises, even if it means bringing threat or harm or judgment from others. We use the power of a voice to make a difference by sharing our truth, by standing up for what we believe in. And there's a certain level of confidence and free expression of our true selves in this way, when we're really bringing in our higher self, insights, ideas, inspirations, knowing what's right and wrong within ourselves. Our values, our beliefs are externalized, and we affect our reality in that way by sharing it. We're also able to receive other people's communication. We listen for understanding others. We consider other people's feelings or thoughts or ideas or opinions or emotions or perspectives. We're able to get outside of our own perspective and put ourselves in the shoes of another person and understand why they might be thinking, feeling, acting the way they are. It's not just about verbalizing, it's also about receiving. And if we feel moved and compelled by a higher force, something larger than us, we can't help but voice it, speak it, share it. There is this connection with the throat chakra to like feeling a bigger mission and call that is larger than us, than our personal desires. And again, there's a sense of fluidity and openness and creativity. This is a masculine based chakra because, you know, each chakra alternates, but it is the voice for our sacral chakra, which is the feminine chakra, which is how we feel, our creative faculty. So there is this interesting mix of the masculine and feminine in the throat chakra that gives voice to our creativity, that brings in epiphanies, realizations, deeper insights and understandings into profound things from a higher perspective, and then also connects in with us deeply to understand our own understandings of why we feel the way we do and what we need when we need it. And it all kind of coalesces and gets expressed here. And when the throat chakra is really open and healthy, we are present. We're really listening, not just with our ears or our eyes. We're listening with our whole being as to what an animal is saying or needing, or as to what our plants are needing, like as to what the humans around us are saying. We're listening to them. We're really present and aware. If we're not present and attentive and aware, we're not listening. We're not even able to take in what's presently happening around us. So presence is a huge piece here. And so, you know, there's a value of silence and alone time in the throat chakra as well, because at times when we are, like I said, this is the broadband telepathy, like where we're picking up and we're also emitting like thought forms all around us. We're living in a soup of thought forms, that we can start to lose connection with ourselves, that it's essential that we have periods of alone time and silence so that we can hear ourselves again. We can hear the inner voice of our true selves, of our higher self, of our soul, of our body, of all the levels of consciousness that we have, and reconnect with that. And it's almost like, you know, practicing meditation. It's like letting the stirred up waters of the mind, the mud, the muck settle, so we have clarity again. So we can really know what it is that we feel. We can really know what it is that we really need and think. We could really know what it is that we want and what we want to say and what we want to do. So there's lots of things that cause the throat chakra to not be open. And I would say out of, hundreds of energy healing sessions and readings that I've done with people, the throat chakra is probably the most common shut down one, at least in, of people that I work with that are in the West and America, in modern countries, because of a lot of factors that I have theories on. But, there's the way we're conditioned. There's the whole paradigm of our society of like being an employee, of our educational system to conform and be easygoing and go with the flow. And there's also generations and generations and generations of our ancestors and just centuries of history where we have literally in our soul journey from lifetime to lifetime experienced physical death for using our voice, for speaking up against the predominant thought of the time. They were called heretics. Or for using our clairaudience, our telepathy, being the voice for spirit, and being called a witch and killed for that, and being persecuted, right? Like there's so many circumstances where we literally were killed because we used our voice. We stood up for what we believed in and we were cut down, right? Like there's a biological body protection mechanism that shuts down this chakra when we are in situations that remind us of our history, of our ancestors, of our soul past lives. I can say that when I was working on my ability to really speak clearly, I found myself tripping up and not being able to really articulate ideas and things that I wanted to talk about clearly. So I was going to like Toastmasters and I was learning about public speaking. And it was like, I still had this experience when I was in front of a group of people, especially strangers. I would just shut down and like couldn't talk. Like I just couldn't talk. And it's fascinating to think about the number one fear that's been recorded, at least in the West, being public speaking, even over death, because this is a shared experience. It's not just my experience, right? It's like, many people are terrified and shut down. Their nervous system takes over whenever they're in front of a crowd of people. It's associated with not being safe. It's associated with just lifetimes and lifetimes of the body and the consciousness for survival equating being seen as danger. Because when you're really seen and you stand out, you risk, attack or persecution or being, labeled a heretic or a witch or whatever, all these things that happened in the past. But if you stay small and you join the rest of the sheep and you just duck your head down, you'll survive. And so our body consciousness kicks in. So connecting the past for ancestry, it's like in our DNA, or for past lives, it's in our soul level. Connecting with the past conditioning that is alive in our energy field when it comes to speaking your truth helps us to bring that up to speed in present time. And I did a lot of work on this with myself, and I've done a lot of work with other healers because this is really, really common for healers. They're like terrified to even come out of the spiritual closet to tell their family that, I do Reiki. It's like they're so terrified, and they're like, I don't understand why it's so terrifying. And, there's a lot of assumptions. If you're doing like mediumship or intuitive readings or Reiki or things that maybe your traditional Christian family may deem evil or wrong or shame you for, like, of course you're going to be afraid to come out. But that's kind of just the way our history has been, is that if we stand out against the group that we're within and we have a different idea, we have a different opinion, we have a different feeling, we have a different need, that we shut down because we're afraid that if we voice that, if we really share that truth, that we're not going to be loved and accepted, or at worst we're going to be rejected, ostracized, or even at worst killed or persecuted for it. So there's lots of energetic things that happen as a result of this in our throat chakra. You think about the nervous system trauma states, right? We have fight or flight or freeze or fawn, if you've heard about those. Those are all different coping mechanisms of the throat chakra and the body when it comes to encountering unsafe people or situations. And different things happen energetically with each of those things. And there's also what happens when we're disconnected from our throat chakra, when it's completely shut down, with our spiritual connection, with our body connection, with our self connection, with connections with others. There's also an element here of when we are self-sabotaging ourselves because we're not really using our voice. And then also how we use our voice when we're triggered and we really use it in a misaligned way and harm others, and the effects of that on karma and all of that. There's so much more to talk about. I'm gonna have to do another video on those other aspects I just mentioned, and then also how can you start to heal the throat chakra? Like, what do we need to do to begin to release the heaviness of centuries of past life experience, centuries of our ancestors having traumas here, and then also in our personal life, how do we heal what we have experienced in this life that makes us shut down this area, that makes us afraid to be ourselves, to speak our truth? I'm going to talk about that as well.